Greetings and welcome everyone to the Virtual Greenroom with Will Liverman. Will, especially as our honored guest, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. I'm going to start actually by seeing if I can embarrass you by listing some of the many awards that you've received over the years. The 2022 Sphinx MP Power Artist Grant, the 2020 Marian Anderson Vocal Award, the 2019 Richard Tucker Career Grant, the 2019 Sphinx Medal of Excellence. It goes on and on. The Stella Maris International Vocal Competition, which you won in 2015. We could spend the whole hour listing your awards. Congratulations for all of those things.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Let's begin with where you are both geographically and artistic right now. We're reaching you in Los Angeles, where you've had just the first performance in a run of Pelias in Melisande.
Yeah. Well, actually, I took a detour to New York to catch my partner in Sweeney Todd. So that's where I am currently. But I will come back tomorrow to LA. You know, we have a brush up rehearsal with our next performance on Sunday. But it's been a joy. It's been my first time out in LA and on the West Coast. So I've had a really good time getting to know the city and getting a chance to do this tremendous work that doesn't get often done. So it's really been a great experience for me.
Yeah, I mean it's a remarkable work, and just today the LA Times filed a review praising your beaming high baritone and boyishly eager performance as Pelias. So
I'll
congratulations
take
for that.
that. Thank you
If,
so
you know,
much.
if the critics' words mean much in one way or another, but
Uh,
but yeah, indeed they do. Let's talk about this. I mean, it's such a mysterious, wonderful work, not done very often. The last time it was done in Los Angeles, as I'm sure you know, it was a Peter Sellers concept production set in a Malibu beach house.
I heard
This
about that.
this production is quite different. It's a unit set in the castle. Is that right?
Mhm. Absolutely. It's a little darker, it's super, cerebral. Like not much happens like acting wise, not like a bouncing back and forth, but everything, the devil's in the details in this piece. And there's really nowhere to hide, if that makes sense, with how it's written and the story that we're telling. And I think the set really sets that up beautifully. I mean, it's kind of haunting, when you think about the impending doom of the deaths and, foreshadowing in a way. But it's stunning to look at, like the music, and it's it's a really great production.
A role like no other. How do you prepare for a role like this? What did you do to start to approach this remarkable role and this incredible, still vivid piece of
Mhm.
operatic theater?
Man, it's definitely by far the most challenging role I think I've ever done on multiple levels. One, of course, this role is done sometimes by a tenor, so it's definitely the highest thing I've done. And I'm preparing for it, it's so wordy, and not just that, it's just how it's set, it's Peleas has such a human nature about it, in that the delivery of the music and the textures of the rhythm just kind of comes off like natural speech almost, and the winding melodies and shape of it really makes it hard to grasp. Like, so I had to really repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat the text and the translations, um, and speak the rhythms and kind of just put those things together, and just the repetition of it. And I'll say, I think I really didn't feel it into my body. And I guess this is the case with, learning new rep in general, but especially with this, I really just had to sing it and get it on his feet and get into the staging and mess up and find the mistakes and, like, just take it back and, keep woodshedding and navigating my way through it. So I felt good about, what I was doing vocally, musically, and dramatically throughout the piece, because it's quite a feat, and but it's definitely stretched me in a lot of ways. And when you really get it, it can be really fulfilling, to perform it.
I mean, the intimacy of the love triangle with your Pelias's half brother and this mysterious Melisande. Talk about your relationship to those performers. I mean, it's just almost painfully intimate that what goes on among the three of them.
Oh, absolutely. And shout out to Sydney and Kyle, who
Mm,
are really fantastic performers. And I'm so lucky to have done my first Paleos with them. They're tremendous and great to work with. It's a story of forbidden love in a way, and with has what like I was saying, this idea of it being kind of a human story. There really are no like good guys in this. Like everyone is Golo with his vengeance that he exacts on me, and Melisande and I falling in love and kind of portraying the royal family in that way. We all have our flaws, but like you said, there is so much intimacy and detail within each scene, each of the scenes, and that to me is what makes it so stunning. When you think about the subtleties in like a TV show, or like camera angles, or like just the specifics of how the story is told. um and with the for me, I think about art song, and how it's so intimate. I do a lot of song, and
mm,
I kind of relate this to that in a way. It's kind of like combining like Wagner and art song, because it has so many lush qualities, but the intimacy of the words and what we're saying carry the most weight in the show. And I think that's another thing to tap into, that I had to tap into with learning the role and making sure the delivery was coming across, was going beyond. It doesn't have the arias and the duets and like here's this number and here's that number. It's truly composed, and so you just have to always be with it, and ahead, but still like in with your scene partner and delivering the scene so it comes across in a natural way. um and I think we found that throughout the rehearsal process. And a shout out to LA Opera. The music staff is amazing, and making us feel good about what we're doing, and secure in those crazy entrances and rhythms and
mm.
everything. I mean, it runs the gambit, this piece, and it's like I say, it's really stretched me as an artist and as a musician and as a singer, and yeah.
Well, a couple of things that you said I want to pick up on. One is mentioning Wagner. Like Wagner's operas, the orchestra in Pelias is so important and so integral. I mean, obviously the orchestra is always important, but
Right. Yeah.
orchestration here and the way in which the orchestra carries so much of the emotional content of the
Hmm.
piece. What's it like for you as a singer to to think or relate differently, if that's what you do, with the orchestra in a piece like this?
Oh, the orchestra, man. I remember when, because of course I listened to the piece, but it's one thing to listen, and another thing to hop into that Zitz probe and hear those
Mhm.
colors that close for the first time, because so many things begin to click. And it's like you say, the music and the orchestra has so much to do with the storytelling as well. I mean, I feel like it's give and take with the interludes. Just the flow of it. Like once it starts, it just keeps going. I mean, it's a conversation between us on stage, but also a conversation between the singers and the musicians in the pit, and how we kind of tell the story together. And I think that's also one of the great things about this piece, and why it's such one of the important pieces of French classical music.
Was there, is there a moment in the opera that was a sort of a key in the lock kind of thing for you, a place where you really felt you connected in a particularly powerful and revealing way for you, a kind of entry point for you? Is there some point in the opera that's particularly crucial to you?
I think definitely Act Four, Scene Four, when I die. Well, first of
Mhm.
all, I never has a baritone that does more of the lyrical fun stuff. As far as operas go, there are not many operas where I do die and have
You
that
don't
big
get to die.
operatic.
What a what a terrible handicap.
I know. And and it's rare for the low voices, or at least for the rep that I do, to have like a good old fashioned like opera shena, the drama, the weirdness, the love, the betrayal, like all the things you love about opera. Um, you get in that act four, scene four, just the stretching of the music, um, the excitement in the music, the drama in the music, like it all kind of comes at a breaking point when, Melizon and I reconnect in the fountain.
Mm.
We profess our love for one another, and then, Galo, of course, comes in. That whole scene, that was the hardest scene for me, honestly. That was actually the one that gave me the most trouble, but the most rewarding. And when I was doing my research, I discovered that that was Debussy's first thing that he wrote for the opera. And it makes sense because there's so much in it, like it really is a roller coaster of
Interesting.
emotions and the music, like, and all the different changes of tempo. And like, he really puts everything out there, and you can really feel that in that scene. I would say that's probably, yeah, to answer your question, where I feel like most, kind of connected to the music. That and the fountain and the tower scene of
Mm.
two, of course, like are beautiful moments and between Peleas and Melazon that really, are the pinnacle points in the piece. But the Act Four, Scene Four was a discovery for me in that.
You mentioned that the role is often played by a tenor. Are there places where you're really stretched vocally at the higher end that
Yeah,
challenge ways you haven't been before?
yeah, I think for me, it's the differences are all in the color, because, of course, a tenor can do more, or at least for my voice. I mean, I can't speak for every baritone. There are a lot of baritones that can, we do different things. And for me, vocally, like when I get to the higher points in my range, it's I can do less color wise. It's more about just getting the sound out there and the note out there as I approach like the top of my range. Whereas, of course, a tenor, if he's on an F sharp G, he can do more hairpins and shape things more. But then where I in the lower part of my voice and the more conversational part of my voice, it's easier for me to kind of rattle off all of that French there. So I think for me, the challenge is navigating the higher moments. I've never had to sing a public A, like it's optional in Barbara Seville, but Debussy was like, "You're gonna sing
You're
this."
going to hit it.
Right, exactly, or bust. So it's my first time, singing that out in public, um, and I've been doing a lot of contemporary English over the past few years. So it was honestly my first time kind of coming back to an opera in a foreign language, and this being like the quintessential like French opera, putting all those things together, it took a lot of time and, a lot of just sad nights of failing when Debussy wins again, but it really, like I said, it just takes patience and really a village. I think about the music staff and everybody involved in helping us with feeling good with the music, and James Collin with how he led the orchestra and making us feel just really cared for in every way in approaching this piece.
You mentioned earlier that the lines often feel, if they're done well, which is certainly the experience of one listening to the opera, is that they feel like natural speech, heightened but natural speech in a way. And
Yeah.
I wonder for you about French, how the French fits your voice and how you feel, how you kind of enter that to achieve that naturalness and yet that haunting, you know
Hmm.
heightened quality of Debussy's vocal lines as well, and the lyrics, of course.
Yeah, yeah. It's all in this in the style, of course, like and it really is all about writing the legato line and finding the through line for each phrase. And honestly, it was a bit of a challenge because, being a lower voice, sometimes, we want to give emphasis to like certain words or like maybe put too much gas on certain things, and that's not the style. It's really um, thinking about how you approach the text uh, in terms of not punching on things, but just finding that through line and kind of shaping each phrase like that. And for me, I think I just did a lot of speaking. and speaking and trying to just find where things sit naturally, like speech wise, even though I like, and that's another thing, I'm not a French speaker, so it's like the extra layers, of course, to get comfortable to the point of like marrying those two things together. And then for the voice to get comfortable, and like the delivery and uh, just feeling good about each thing that you sing, because it never, that's the thing, Debussy, this piece takes you by surprise. You think it's going one way and it's
Mm,
going another way, with
mm,
the pentatonic things he uses, the whole tone
right. Yeah.
scale, and like it really is kind of an endless melody in a lot of ways, and it teaches you how to, it keeps you honest as a singer, to always be true to the legato line, because that's the really the way in which you can be successful. And consonants too. That's something I think I wasn't thinking a lot about, when I'm thinking about like French, vowels, like, but it really, the consonants are a big thing, especially in a house like LA, and just that kind of is the connective tissue that can, kind of guides the line. So finding that balance, is a challenge.
Mm. Is that something that you do often in preparing for a role, that you will speak the lines, that you will run the lines sort of without music for to kind of get comfortable with the verse or the text or whatever it is? Is that something you do routinely?
Yeah, depending on what it is, things that I feel more comfortable with, like when I'm looking on the page, I'm like, oh, that'll be fine, like, but
Mm,
it's always good to at least a few times speak, or at least I like to speak the lines of something where I just feel like it'll benefit me when I'm unsure, or just want to really make sure I have the text right. But I think it's always a good place to start, just so you can feel yourself speaking and not hiding behind notes or rhythms, just like what the language is, and the inflection in each thing you sing, and the clarity too. That's just one of the things I really tried to focus on, and learning it, was making sure that the things I was saying wasn't just in my mind, like clear, but like finding ways to make sure I'm always projecting out. So the French is hopefully, easier to grasp and understand what I'm trying to do.
you mentioned this was your most challenging role. Do you mean emotionally, or musically, or both?
For me, I think it's musically and mentally, because of how it's written, and what's required of us as actors. It's not a lot of, I mean, it's going back to what we said about the intimacy in a lot of different things, the love, the intimacy, and kind of like the, you know or like the quiet, the back and forth that I have with Golo and the cave, just like all of these things that are said but not said, um all of that kind of combined together, I think, makes it a challenge. Because, like I said, there's really no place to hide in this. You can't hide behind like a flaunty number, or a, hey, look at me, I'm, on stage and doing this and that. Like, it's really a lot of, intent, and what you're, and everything that you do, every single line has to mean something. And you have to, sort of make sense of that for yourself, and it has to come across. Because the story is so different, and it's not done that often, so it really, I think, to me, is what makes it challenging in ways. But also, like I said, it's challenging. The things that are most challenging tend to be the most rewarding when you get it. And
Mm.
the more we did it, and I remember we did that dress rehearsal, and things started to finally click in, for me at least, with the feel of the show, and just the pacing, um seeing the costumes, and the story of the costumes, and the design and the lighting all come together, um, was really exciting to see unfold.
And musically, the whole tone scale, the pentatonic scale, as you say, it's sort of like tonality is being reinvented by
You're
Debussy.
right,
It's
because your
not.
ear wants to, do re mi fa sol la ti,
Yeah, yeah.
like, it's just like, whoa, where are we, like you're going straight, and then it's a U-turn and a left, and then you're good for a while, but then it bears off. But yeah, like you said, Um, and you know, that's a really cool thing that I realized into going in this opera or into learning it. It's a lot of soul, like the ninth and 11th, 13th chords that Debussy utilizes.
Mhm.
Um, it really, you know, there's a lot of heart in it. Even though it's like when you listen, it's got a lot of fluidity and things, but like when he really locks in on those chords, you know, I love, you know, I'm a nerd when it comes to that, studying piano growing up with gospel music, and I'm always looking for similarities between the classics and, you know, the more of the mainstream styles that I grew up with. And the opera has a lot of soul. Sometimes I'm learning it. I'm like, "Ooh, David, that's a nice chord." I'll be like, I have to steal this, like write this one down, you know, like he really did his thing with this opera, and you know, wish he had done more. But I mean, this is such. I mean, it's such a instrumental and an imperative piece. Um, that was a game changer, you know. And I think it's. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to do it this time around.
Yeah. Well, yeah, what you were just talking about, we'll get to it in a minute, but your work on the factotum certainly comes to mind when you're talking about the connections from
Yeah.
across genres like that. We'll get to that in a moment. But I wanted to ask you before we leave Pelias and go on to so much else that's going on in your career, has gone on and is going on in the future. Why do you think the piece is not done more? What do you think is the climb for an audience or a company thinking they can't? What do you think is has kept this piece somewhat of a rarity?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's very peculiar in you know, a lot of ways, and what we think of as traditional opera and like the classics that we always see in the canon. Um, and within the French style, you know, it's its own thing. Like it's, you know, it's not Carmen or Bizet and that more of like robust or,
Mm,
you know, it's just very, it's in its own little world. And I think it's, you know, it can maybe be difficult to program because people just don't know what to place it or what to make of it. Is like, is it more of like fairy tale or you know, like I don't know. I think there's just so much to unpack. But musically, I think you know. I mean, I wish it were done more. Just strictly when you think about the the orchestra and you know the beautiful colors in the piece and the singing too. I mean, everything. Um, but I don't know. I wish it was performed or more part of the canon, and we see it, you know, come up more often.
maybe it makes sense that Debussy only completed one opera. It's a singular work in every sense, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, it's a great piece, and it's a beautiful cast, and you know, I couldn't ask for a better role debut and house debut in LA.
Yeah, well, congratulations and enjoy the rest of the run. It continues through April 16th at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. So folks who are in Los Angeles or on their way to Los Angeles should definitely try to catch it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Poking around on YouTube and listening to you to sing, one of the things that's, you've sung in many languages, German, French,
Mhm.
Italian, of course, English, all sorts of work across the spectrum, John Adams, William Balcom. One thing that's striking is your diction is just exquisite. And I wonder if that's something that you particularly pride yourself on or that you work on especially hard because it certainly comes across in listening to your work.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think the more I do this, the more I realize, you know, that you know what we do, or the you know the thing that separates us from other instruments is the fact that we you know communicate with our words. Whereas you know you listen to a symphony, you can kind of go into your own world and you know imagine what's being said to you or set the atmosphere up for yourself. But with us, you know, the text is everything, and it's all about how you say something. um for me, that you know is what is the blueprint for you know leaving your stamp on a piece. And for you know when you're young, it's all about, oh, I got the highest note or the best, you know, I'm trying to sound the biggest or this or that. But you know, I think that's just a cycle of like as we grow as artists, you know, you realize you know what's important and why is it important. And for me, I think the text and the delivery of it is why, I try and spend a lot of time making sure I do my due diligence, and understanding the style and the delivery, because that's everything. If you don't get the message, then it's lost. So um, I appreciate you saying that, because that's something that I try and put a lot of effort into with whatever I do.
Is there a language that feels especially comfortable you, and a language that feels more of a stretch for you to get on top of?
I think French is definitely the stretch one, just because I don't. When I started off, I didn't sing a lot of French. I was doing more barbers and magic flutes. Um, and I think probably German would be the most comfortable, just by circumstance of learning how to learn Papageno. And I just took some like German class, did like a little app on my phone over really trying to get the language under my belt for a time. I never got to be fluent, but like it was the language that I really spent a lot of
Mm.
time on in the early part of my career, that when I revisit something, and I do a lot of art song too, that's another thing. So I try to, art song, I think, is another thing that helps keep me in line with the idea of what it means to communicate, because that's really all you have in those concerts, is just your collaborator and the story that you have to tell. There's no costumes, there's no big lights, and it's just you and how you interpret. And so I would say, the long way of answering your question, I would say German, I think, is easier. French is harder, but then when I do get it, it's the most rewarding thing, and it really, like, it clicks in. I would say the same with Russian too. I love singing in Russian, but it takes the longest to learn, just
Mm.
because it's the one I'm least familiar with, and we're not really taught it in school. But I just love the language, and just like the vowel placement, and just it fits my voice like a glove. Um, yeah, I'm just a nerd for languages and vowels and placement, and tinkering with things. And for me, that's the fun of it too. When it can be frustrating on one front, when you're just trying to get it and it's not sticking. But like, um, I think that's one of the joys of doing what we do, is that the work is hard, but when it starts to, the lights start to come on, and then you get it, you realize why you do it in the first place, if that makes sense.
You mentioned art songs. Here's an unfair question: would you rather do an evening of art songs, or would you rather appear in an opera?
Oh, that's oh why did oh no
Unfair,
that's
unfair. Come on.
hard. Whew, that's very, very hard. I would say as of late, maybe, only because, for a number of reasons, I probably maybe art song, and only because I think that's just the world that I'm in right now. I'm doing a lot of recitals recently, and I think it's because of our license to program recitals, to tell the stories that we want to tell, and the variety. It's not like I mean, I love opera, and there are certain things that you can only get from. I mean, there's Peleos and Melisande is such a rare experience. Like, anyone who is able to see it should, just because of that's something that you can only get, like, through the art form that we all know and love, which is opera. The totality of everything. But I don't know. I guess art song for today. Tomorrow might change, but
We'll check back
uh,
with you tomorrow.
yeah, right, right.
Well, I was looking at your incredible schedule coming up. It sounds like you're never going to be off an airplane for very long in the coming months. I mean,
Yeah,
among the
yeah.
things coming up are Pearl Fisher's at Austin Opera,
Mhm.
a night at Brooklyn Art Song Society, Tanglewood. A couple of things I did want to zero in on. One is this one night, uh, Orpheus at Carnegie Hall, which combines, in ways that you'll have to explain to us, Beethoven's Egmont music and Paul Robeson. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about what that evening is, and how that came about?
Well, that is a collaboration, yeah, with Orpheus, and I think who's singing it? Karen Slack and
Mhm.
myself are the singers, and I think she's singing some things in Beethoven, and I'm singing some pieces with her, commissioned by Jasmine Barnes.
Mhm.
To be honest, I'm not sure what the structure or like, because I kind of came into it. They just asked me to, hop on board and like celebrate, Paul Robeson. And I've got a poster of Paul Robeson in my room. So I mean, I was like eager to hop on board and to celebrate his legacy and to perform at Carnegie Hall. Um, so I think it's great, when I think about um, the visibility of Black stories and Black artists in the world now, and how important their journeys were, our journeys are, um, in classical music, and doing a Beethoven and Paul Robeson combo is pretty neat. And I think we need more of that in making. I'm a big advocate for works by artists of color and BIPOC artists really, go wherever. And that's why, art song is such an important aspect of or thing of what I do, because it's, I get a chance to highlight um, composers and, librettists who maybe didn't get a lot of shine in their day, but their works live on. And I just feel, called to tell those stories. But I'm really looking forward to the concert in May. I think that's going to be a great evening, and I look forward to working with Jasmine and Karen Slack. They're really beautiful artists and individual people.
Right. Well, what you just touched on brings to mind your the album that you created, the concert. You have the Dreams of a New Day,
Yeah.
songs by Black composers. Let's talk about that a little bit. What
Mhm.
that is exactly. Tell folks in the green room what it is and how it came to be, and
Yeah.
your important role in not just performing works, but stimulating and commissioning works.
Yeah, Dreams of a New Day is a project, an album that I recorded with pianist Paul Sanchez in 2021. I think it was released with D Records. And really, the whole goal of the project was to highlight Black composers for their contributions in art song, while also highlighting our composers of today, because I think that's just such an important thing that we have to keep doing and striving to do in the arts community. So one of the big and also telling new works or telling new stories. So I commissioned a good friend of mine, Sean O'Pebolo, to write this piece, Two Black Churches,
Mm.
which is sort of the focal point of the album. The first piece touches on the Birmingham bombing, and the second piece touches on the uh, the shooting in Charleston at the in 2015, I think it was. And so really the album kind of was a twofold thing of, highlighting composers, but also being true to our story, and kind of confronting these things head on. And that was, my way of expressing, all the things that I was seeing happening around me in America, and, the change that I wanted to see. And so it kind of became an instrument for kind of both of these um, things to come through.
I mean, music can make that connection across time in a way that nothing else can. The Birmingham bombing and then the Charleston uh,
Hmm.
terrible tragedy in Charleston,
Yeah.
coming together in a single in a single piece of music, two pieces of music like that is very powerful way to connect that
Mm.
past tragedies are not past us in many ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That was one of the goals for sure. And, it's beautiful because I encourage other artists, if you have a project or there's something that's speaking to you, to find a way to get it done. Because I think that's another way in which we continue to elevate and expand the art form. Because I've seen Two Black Churches performed a number of times, and it's great to see, that piece live on and those stories told in different spaces. And we have to continue to do that. And yeah.
Well, speaking of important roles, important Black roles, come later on this year, you'll be back at the Met where you were just recently in Fire Shut Up in My Bones, playing the title role in the Life and Times of Malcolm X, the Anthony Davis and Jelani Davis opera that amazingly is only just now making it to the Met after first premiering in the mid 80s.
Mhm.
Tell me about that and what you feel about taking on that role in that opera, which is finally getting its due, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's a tremendous honor to be able to do this role for a number of reasons. And, I'm approaching it very carefully, because Malcolm X obviously is such, an important figure in our American history and our world history. And I think that's something that I'm going to really be spending the summer on, really I've got my summer off to take time and do my due diligence beyond, what I know of Malcolm X and the documentaries and things and books that I've read, but, really I just want to really embody this character to the best of my abilities and tell the story as truthfully as I can. And getting to work or getting to do another work by a significant Black composer is not lost on me, and it's something that I take with great pride. And um, I really look forward to coming back to the Met and tackling uh, that piece in the fall. But it's a big undertaking. To be honest, I've got a little nerves, when you think about his impact in Harlem and in New York and everywhere. But it's something that I'm honored to do, and will do my best to tell that story, and the cast too. I mean, it's a beautiful cast that I'm working with Leah Hawkins and Rayanne Bryce, and it's just I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, your career, because the Met is so important and looms so large, not just in New York, but in the musical culture around the world,
Right.
having just premiered the first opera by a Black composer ever done at the Met in Terence Blanchard's Fire Shut Up in My Bones, how much freight do you feel like you're carrying, or how much import as having been now these two more or less back to back important works coming to the Met and coming to prominence in the opera world?
Mhm. Yeah, for me, I kind of, man, well, yeah, I'll say Fire Shut My Bones. That was, uh, I'll never forget that experience for a number of reasons. Thinking about the weight of what that meant and kind of being the face of this piece by Terence Blanchard and coming off of COVID, the Met being shut down for 2 years
Mm.
after COVID. There's so much going through my head. Am I the right man for the job? I came into that job over the pandemic. I got a phone call to audition, and I was not expecting to come out of the pandemic and see my face all over buses and trains. Like, it was the most bizarre thing. And so much of that experience I'm still processing. But to answer your question, I kind of view it as, like, I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of the people that have come before me, that have allowed me to be in this position, to sing this role, to be ready for that moment. And I just felt like, the ancestors in a way were with me. Um, and it's an honor and a privilege to pave the way, for the next generation. Just how I was inspired by watching, Denise Graves at the Met when I was in high school, or Lawrence Brownlee, and seeing Black artists, shine on, the world's biggest stages in opera. So it's something I always think about, and try to remember the ones that came before me. If they did it, I and with the I mean, you think about the civil rights movement, I think about, Marian Anderson, and the circumstances were so different, and to step into all of these things now, all of these things are not lost on me, and I try my best to uplift their legacies while carrying my own, while hopefully um, being inspiration for the next high school kid that goes to med and may see me up there, um, because that's what got me to where I am. So that's yeah.
Well, you're expanding the footprint in another way through the factotum. I'm thinking of a piece that you did. Also, that started kind of during the pandemic too, didn't it? That was a
Yeah.
piece that you were working on, and then the pandemic, which altered everything for everyone. But
Yeah.
barbering is an important connective tissue in that, in both
Yeah.
senses. Talk about a little bit of that. I know barber was your first professional role, and you've done it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it led to a kind of inspired connection to another kind of barbering.
Right. Right. Yeah. Going back to this idea of telling our truths, as Black people, I think, we see a lot of stories that deal with Black pain, and that's our journey, and we can't shy away from that. But one of the inspirations behind the factotum was to show more of the Black joy on stage. And when I was doing Barber of Seville, I had an idea a few years back to, like, what if we updated Barber of Seville and set it in a present day Black barbershop, kind of like how Jonathan Larson did with La Boheme and Rent,
Mm,
and creating something that's has appeal for people who love opera and know opera, and appeal for younger folks who maybe have not been to the opera but can get introduced to opera through a different way, with a story that's has like operatic, or Barber of Seville, it's a classic.
mm.
So that's kind of how the idea came to be, and I started writing it with
Didn't this idea actually occur to you when you were in a barber
it
shop in
was, I
Chicago?
was, yeah, because the Black barbershop experience is so unique, because it's really that and the church are always the pillars of every community. Um, and I think about all the people going in and out. It really is like a sitcom, no matter where you are in the world. I mean, you go visit a Black barbershop, there's so much culture, the talks in the barbershop, from being very light to dealing with very serious issues. It's like a safe space. And
Mm.
just sitting there watching all these things happen, I'm like, oh, this would be such a great setting for an opera. um, and that's how the idea started, and I started writing it with a friend of mine from high school. We actually attended the same governor school where we both studied opera, and he went on to producing, and then we started writing it right before the pandemic. But at that time, it was just sort of, we were going to make like a mixtape, or kind of have it be put out as like a digital EP, or release or something. And then when the pandemic happened, it just sort of shifted gears, or we unexpectedly ended up workshopping the factotum at the Lyric, and that workshop turned into a premiere.
The Lyric in Chicago.
Yeah, yeah, Lyric Opera of Chicago, and that premiere just happened last month. So it's been a few years in the making of creating this piece. And for those of you listening, that if you haven't heard about it or want to see it, it was streamed. We streamed the final two shows of it, I think, and the stream will be made available through the Lyrics website, I think in April or May, and it's free if you want to check it out. And it's yeah, it's the Factotum.
And talk about, you did what the musical stylistically, what you were doing with that. You were really blending genres in a way that's quite unusual. I mean, Rent is somewhat of an analog, but not exactly.
Yeah, for me, I think the more I'm in opera, and the more I think about my childhood growing up in gospel, um, there's so many similarities between the two styles. And in creating the factotum, one of the things we wanted to really go for is how we can really unapologetically combine these styles in a way where you are introduced through the operatic voice, through like an R&B flavor or blues or hip hop, and finding kind of connection points between the two. And it turns out there are quite a few, even going back to talking about Debussy and his kind of
Yeah, I was
jazz
going to
chords.
say
Like,
those chords. Yeah.
yeah, there's so much when you think about R&B and soul that goes right hand in hand with opera and like the melodicism that you hear in, you know, especially 90s R&B, um, fits right in with opera. Um, that sort of support, and you think about hip hop and the kind of frequency and the of the word, like the what am I trying to say? The kind of that rapid fire thing that trap and hip hop has. I kind of think about Patter and Rossini,
Recitativa.
and
Yeah.
the
Right.
recitative,
Yeah.
and us paying homage to like the Rossini crescendo and like one of our numbers in conversation where barbershop chatter tends to build and build, and people come in and like, you know, just kind of all erupts. So that was always, I mean, honestly, that was the fun part of um, creating in just kind of being in the lab and just like mixing this. What if we do this? And what if we do that? Like, and it, to see it blossom into what it did and having a full blown production, it was really, really cool to see this nugget of an idea turn into what it did. And I was, I mean, it was unlike anything. I mean, I never expected my life or my path, you know, which I thought was just going to be singing, to go in to go in that direction. As much as I love creating for myself, you know, I never envisioned of premiering a show at Lyric by a long shot. So it was a really great experience. And the cool thing, you know, being a creator, um, writing the music and the lyrics, you learn a lot about, or I pay more attention to other style, or, you know, when I go and revisit scores, I'm looking really intently, you know, at how things are written and where the breaks are in the tessitura of like sopranos, mezzos, and like where things sit. Paying closer attention to, you know, orchestration. And I mean, you talk about Debussy and Peleos, like how music is so much a part of the story. Um, I think those things, you know, I just was really tapping into a bit more after, you know, creating for the first time this opera. So
Yeah, fantastic. You mentioned your high school. There's a great story that you tell about. I think you were 13 or 14, and you decided to audition for some vocal program that you didn't know was really about opera.
yeah,
It's a great story. What, what was your?
yeah. Well, I auditioned for the Governor's School for the Arts in Norfolk, Virginia, and they had different disciplines like dance, visual arts, musical theater. And mind you, this school was an addition to our public school. Like we couldn't get it, like our degree at this school. It was basically an after school, but I mean it was super intense because, you know, we were there for 3 hours. We learned theory. We were doing fully staged operas. But at the time when I auditioned, when it said like voice, I assumed it meant like, you know, gospel or R&B, and then I saw that you had to sing an Italian art song, and I had never even could even begin like at that age to know what that meant. Like Caro Mio band, like what what
Those
is
24 Italian songs, huh?
exactly? So
Yeah.
I sang the Star Spangled Banner, and I remember that day the director of voice like kind of pulled me aside and was like, "We think you could have a future in opera singing," and I was like, "Okay, you know, I'll try this out." Like I had never in my life, you know, thought that I would go down the path of, you know, being an opera singer, but Governor School changed everything for me.
I, I believe you said the first opera you saw was Die Valkyrie, which is sort of, you know, stepping in with both feet. I believe you said you fell asleep during it.
Yep. I promptly fell asleep. It was the Valkyrie at Virginia Opera, and the way, you know, it worked was our school would get a chance to see the dress rehearsals of what Virginia Opera was doing. And, you know, I sat down and just it started, and I was kind of like tired from school, and I was out like 15 minutes in. But, you know, I tell this that when the Act Three, I think, rolls around and it's the Ride of the Valkyries
The
hit,
Valkyries.
I woke up because I recognized that theme because I had heard it in Bugs Bunny and in mainstream commercials, and I turned to my teacher and I accused the opera of stealing it from the cartoon because I had no idea that, you know, what was what, like, and he was like, no, the Faulkner wrote this, you know, the the mainstream and the cartoon sample from this opera. And I was like, what, really, you know? And then it was, all of the things just started to make sense, and it was, you know, became like a larger than life moment to see the Valkyries come down, and, you know, kind of this unnatural, like, but really booming voices that are just like hitting me like right here. And it was, man, how are they doing that? What are they doing to support that? How does one sing like that? And that was kind of my way in.
You're probably not the only one for whom Bugs Bunny was the portal into opera
Yeah, totally right. Yeah, Barbara Seville
once
too. Yeah.
it took for you, was it, kind of, once you got past your misgivings about it all, did it happen pretty quickly for you after that?
It took some time because I think there's so much to grasp in the when you think about the art of opera and all the things that it takes, you know, to do the craft well. Um, but by the time I got to my senior year, I feel like, I mean, for one, like getting a chance to perform, there was something that was really fulfilling about it that, you know, nothing else had fulfilled me in that way. So I knew there was something there. Um, but, you know, by the time I finished that program, I was fully committed to continuing studying opera at the undergraduate level, and just decided to see where things were going to go, because it was just so new to me and thrilling and exciting. And, you know, it just, um, every day I felt like I was learning something new about opera. And like, it was, yeah, governor school was a great gift for me, because if it weren't for governor school, I would have gone into a completely different field, I think.
Did your friends think it was weird that what was this opera thing? What were you doing? Was there?
Totally, you know, but the cool thing too about doing governor school is, you know, we were the governor school students. I mean, we were all friends together and like learning and bearing, or, you know, experiencing the program together. So like, it was weird for our public school, you know, friends to be like, wait, so we're gonna go to see the marriage of who, at, you know, in Norfolk, Virginia at 7:30, you know, like um, it was always funny to introduce opera to my family and friends when I would talk about, you know, what I would learn, or, you know, the different types of operas and all that. So yeah, there's definitely some of that there.
You're getting a lot of love in the chat room here. Someone said saw Peleus opening night. Will was wonderful. Someone else is asking what the website will be that they could find Factotum on when it comes on in the. I assume it's the lyric
Lyric
the lyric
opera,
website in Chicago.
yeah, I think it's lyricopera.org, and they'll probably have a page, um, when the stream is available, that where you can follow the steps to watch the link, and it's a free stream. So
Great, terrific.
Mhm.
We're running up close to the end of the hour. It's just flown by. Tell me, Will, what you like to do when you're not on stage. What's
I
what's
love to eat. I gotta find a good meal somewhere, and I haven't had time to explore LA. I've heard lots of great things. Well, no, I had some good tacos. I had some good street tacos, but
Well,
man,
you're onto it then. That's where to start.
yeah, yeah. But I love a good meal, and, you know, exploring. I think that's one of the greatest gifts that opera has given me. You know, kind of falling into this thing was growing up. You know, I never thought I was going to leave home, or what the possibilities were, you know, for me. And to be able to travel and to see different parts of the world and different parts of the states, is always a really cool thing, to be able to do what I do. And um, I love to explore. I also love to box too.
Ah,
I fell into boxing when I was in Oklahoma doing Little Prince, and that's just, I don't know, mentally it's a great way to kind of clear everything out. And, you know, I just got some gloves and started doing like title classes. And, you know, I just now I'll go, you know, find a bag and just do some things on my own. It's just like a great, um, way to relieve tension and stress. And, you know, I try to box when I can.
Little Prince and an uppercut. It's not an obvious connection, is it?
Right, Little Prince and an uppercut.
You said you were able to get back and see Sweeney in New York just after, I guess, just after it opened, or were you there for opening night, or?
I was there for opening night. Yeah, my
Oh,
girlfriend is a violinist, and
wow.
she got me a ticket for opening, which was really cool. Because I hadn't been on Broadway in a while, and I'd never been to an opening for a Broadway show, so that was really kind of cool to be in the room and experience that. It was a great show, and um, yeah, it was a good time.
I mean, it's famously, probably the most operatic musical in the repertoire. Is
Right.
that something that would, that would appeal to you to do Broadway? Is that a kind of thing you'd
Oh
like to?
yeah. Oh yeah. If I could find my way in, I totally would do it if it was the right thing. I have a great amount of respect for Broadway and what they do. And if I had an opportunity to do something, honestly, Sweeney would be a dream role.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, staying within the barber world.
Yeah, another barber
Yeah,
connection
right, yeah.
with
So
a
that
slightly sharper blade than in.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I love Broadway. And if you think about, the singers back in the day, they were going back and forth between
Of course.
Broadway and that. You don't really see so much of that now. There's more of a divide, but I think, in today's age, I feel like I was late to the game and with this idea of like stepping outside of the box and, if you feel called or wanting to do something, that's not exactly the thing you studied, you know, do that thing, find a way to make it happen if you feel called to it, if you feel that's you want to do multiple things. So I think, being an artist that can be a factotum in a way, and like, I think that's a great thing these days. It increases your opportunities, and I think each thing informs the other. When you do different or venture out in different lanes.
Well, you've certainly done it, and you've certainly made your mark in wonderful ways. It's been such a pleasure to spend the hour with you, Will. Thank you so much for taking the time, and
Yeah.
God bless for the rest of the run of Pelias and what's beyond for you.
Thanks so much, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Will. Take care.
All right.